So when I listen to you say this, the immediate thing that I think is, if this is English law and constitutional law, then why isn't it being upheld in Britain today? What has happened, and why is it such a difficult thing for people to enact and bring forward in legislation, or if the legislation is already there? In other words, what has happened to the old England, the England that represents the people, and why isn't that represented in British politics, in everyday life? What has happened to change that?
In one phrase, it's called the slow march through the institutions, Marxism. Karl Marx in particular, and there was a particular period in the 1800s, mid-1800s, really it started from 1812, when the British lost the Second War, in effect, against Americans who were actually English, or largely English. That's where it really started. So you've got a group of people called the Fabian Society that create. So what your audience probably don't know is the Fabian Society were the people that actually created the Labour Party and said that they represent the working people. What most people don't realise, it was the Fabian Society that created the Labour Party. Who was funding the Fabian Society? And the answer is the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and you know, the major pharmaceuticals at the time. And really and truthfully, the working class were corralled into a belief in the Labour Party. Some of the people that they stuck up were good people, but really and truthfully, the strategy in the background was not what the people thought it was. A bit like Nigel Farage, who we call Benedict Arnold. For you, if there's anyone American watching this, they'll understand that we reference Nigel Farage as Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold was the person who betrayed George Washington by taking 10,000 guineas off the British and giving him a 16-year-old bird. And by the way, they're both buried in a South London cemetery in Battersea in London in unmarked graves, because that's what happens to people that betray and create treason.
Well, we'll get to betrayal and treason later in the segment. So what you're saying, and I think I've said this previously as well, is when people vote for the Labour Party, they're actually voting for the Fabian Society. Is that correct?
Correct, but people don't realise that the Tories, so Toryism is also Fabianism. There are many Tories who are actually Fabians. Kenneth Clarke, for example, although he's no longer a member of Parliament, he is a Fabian. One of their chief whips that I stood against, David Evanet, for example, went to the London School of Economics, which is a Fabian university in London. So people don't realise the Fabians have infiltrated every single political party except Restore Britain. And the reason I say that is because they're looking for them people, and if they see them anywhere near the party, they're putting the blocks up to them. That's a very good sign, by the way. Whereas if you look at Reform UK, they're actually inviting in Fabian Society members. That's an extremely bad sign.
So I think what you're hinting at there is the Uniparty, the deep swamp, the deep state, the swamp, right? So for people that maybe are not familiar with the term, what is the Fabian Society and what do they stand for?
Well, you can go and check out their website.
It's changed a little bit, hasn't it?
It has changed a little bit. It was more blatant than what it is now. But just to give you an example, the Fabian Society was created to honour in 1884, in effect, the death of Karl Marx, and he was their martyr, the one that they all believed in. And bearing in mind, Karl Marx and Engels, I think his name was, wrote the Communist Manifesto. What people also have to understand was Engels said, and I quote, Every communist revolution has been shipwrecked on the rock of England. He didn't say Britain, he said England. They attack the common law. The common law is the best social justice system in the world. And they operate in another system, which is basically administrative law and centralisation, right? Whereas the common law is the reverse of that, and so was England. England originally, believe it or not, was a confederacy with a light touch government where all of the shires and counties governed themselves, in effect, was given royal warrant to do that. But people really need to understand that the Fabian Society, on their website, it clearly shows, or it did clearly show, if you go to the university that I just mentioned, the London School of Economics, they have a massive glass window, stained glass window. And that stained glass window depicts them reshaping the world in their vision, but also a wolf in sheep's clothing. So they're telling you they're not what they say they are. They are telling you that they're lying to you, right? And their other emblem is one of a turtle. So the turtle means slowly, slowly, right? And the way that they operate and the way that they've operated with the English Constitution is bit by bit, take them bits away. So you don't realise what's happening in the background until you're over above your head and the communists have taken over. It was originally designed by a Roman general called Fabian, and he basically used it to starve out an area and just said, all we've got to do is sit back and wait and we're going to win. And that is what Marxists believe. But just to make sure your audience is aware of this, Keir Starmer is an executive member of the Fabian Society. So is Sadiq Khan and the entire cabinet, our current Labour cabinet. And the last time that happened, we went to war with Iraq on a lie, right? Because Tony Blair, Fabian, Gordon Brown, Fabian, and people need to know how bad they actually are. And just let me make sure everyone's clear with this. Jeremy Corbyn is not a Fabian, right? He's an out-and-out communist. And I've spoken to him personally and asked him about England, and he said, no, we want to regionalise England. England's gone, right? So I just want everyone to be aware there is a difference between Fabians and normal communists. Communists, and why do you in your head, in your head, and say we're taking over the country? Marxists don't do that. They do it bit by bit by bit.
Slowly, like the tortoise. Okay, so if we see this and we know and understand that these people are out there and maybe they haven't got interests that align with the British people, and therefore when we vote for the Labour Party and their manifesto doesn't meet the actions in which they start to pursue once they're in government, then we can understand that actually we're not electing the people that we think that we're electing. But how are we able to combat that using the current system, using common law, using these things that they have slowly diluted over time? How do we get that back?
First of all, the English Constitution is still in full force. It is not being enforced. So to make sure your audience are aware of this, there's an ecological clause in the English Bill of Rights that come from the Glorious Revolution of 1688. It's a very important event. There's a trilogy. It's the Declaration of Reasons, the Declaration of Rights, and the Bill of Rights. The reason why it's so important is because the current king or queen or whatever cannot be a king or queen unless they adhere to the coronation oath that come from that era. That actual law come from them, and so does the Bill of Rights. To make sure your audience are aware of this, the ecological clause actually forbids Sharia law. It forbids Jewish law. It forbids Christian law, as in being imposed directly by the church on a subject, right? So it's non-discriminatory. It actually says any form of religious fanaticism, the English are not interested, right? is the end, right? But it's not being enforced. So there's many other things that I can tell. We got the right to keep and bear arms, for example. It was us, the English, that passed that right to the United States of America. Their Second Amendment it comes from our English Bill of Rights. And by the way, it pre-existed the English Bill of Rights. We've always had the right to keep and bear arms. I've had 2 recent cases where I've had members that have been arrested, charged, and gone to Crown Court for having an offensive weapon. And I've represented them and done their case statements. They've sacked their barrister, sacked their solicitor, used my case stated, used me in court. And on both occasions, it didn't go to the jury. The judge read what I'd written and found the person not guilty, right? Because they know that this is in full force, but no one's using it. So it's the education system that's taking it out. So how do you reinvigorate it? It's like anything else. There's a book I've got on this shelf in particular. Not that I'm going to read it to you, but I'll show you it. Right? That one there is a really great book. It's called The Reinvention of the Magna Carta 1216 to 1616. It was written by Sir John Baker, who's currently living today. And what he does is he actually goes through it and he says, for 200 years, no one mentioned the Magna Carta. One person started talking about it and said, this is still law in England, right? And that was a guy called Sir Edward Coke. And when he started to bring it up, again, all of a sudden the judges went, hang on a minute, this is still law, right? And we need to enforce the Magna Carta. Well, the Bill of Rights protected the Magna Carta, right? I'll say did, because in the mid-1800s, when all this communism stuff started, communism is an extension of Romanism. When it all started, a certain group of people put through Parliament and took out Chapter 3 of the English Bill of Rights unlawfully by stealth and removed the protection that the people had from the Magna Carta. So how do you reinvigorate it? How do you bring it back? Unfortunately, our universities, via the slow march through the institutions, are misinstructing barristers, solicitors, and judges on the English Constitution. So what we do is go around the country and teach people. It is getting through. More and more people are talking about the Constitution, including a guy called Rupert Lowe, who brought it up in the House of Commons and actually said, we have a Bill of Rights. Not long after, he wasn't in Reform UK anymore.